want to share a model that can help you move towards what I would call high flame ministry. And this is a ministry whose complete goal is to create empowered, world changing disciples. In other words, this was the ministry of Jesus. When we look at Jesus as the model, Jesus said, "Follow me, I will make you fishers for people." And that's exactly what Jesus did. Jesus essentially did two things, and this is what these polls do. I want to talk about these. This is a great model that you can use with small groups in your teaching for your own personal development. Is Jesus was both high touch, and by that, Jesus invested heavily of himself in the persons that he called to follow him. Right? So he invested deeply, at least during his earthly time, in the 12. And by investing heavily in the 12, he sent the 12, who then became the 11, into the world to change the world, to take the gospel to the whole world. And he did that not just by being fully available to them, but by having a high challenge, high growth model. So he didn't just simply hang out with the disciples. He trained them, he taught them, he invested in them, he empowered them to do the same sorts of things that he did. So if we want to have a high flame ministry, we need to make sure that at least a block of our time falls within this. And it's helpful just to contrast that with these three other quadrants, because a lot of work that gets called ministry essentially falls into these other three categories. And again, we're not making any judgments, and this part of this is going to be an allocation of time. Again, this is a coaching tool to help you visualize at least where you need to be spending a block of your best time. Because by the way, when you work out of this zone up here, you're most fully invested, and it's going to create those highest moments of joy in ministry for you. Probably the most common area that pastors work in is this one. It's really going to be these two, but this is a especially easy one. This is where it's low touch, high challenge, and growth. And that, in essence, describes the worship setting, where you're talking to the largest number of people. And if you're bold, you may have a pretty strong message, but it doesn't really involve much personal investment by us to make it happen. We're just casting out vision. We're actually calling people to do things. But if we're not careful, what this reduces itself to is a bunch of shoulds, coulds, oughts. And when you tell people what they should be doing or what they could be doing or what they ought to be doing, that's what a lot of preaching is, if we're honest. All that does is create disenchanted folks who think that coming to church essentially is about fear, guilt, and shame. Right? So that's one way. So if we go all in for bore on the scriptures and on calling people to discipleship without investing ourselves or creating systems that are high touch, this is where we leave people essentially at. And what does that lead? That leads slowly to burnout and basically folks saying, I can't wait for the next person to come in. Now, we can also fall into an opposite category sometimes, because some of us are high touch by nature, but we're afraid to step on toes. And so what this can kind of do is this kind of can create a cozy relationship. And even in preaching and teaching, if it's high touch, we always hang out with folks. We're really good at shaking hands. We're really good at just showing up visitation, having church dinners. But it's cozy, right? Because we really don't challenge people to change. We just maintain a pastoral presence. Again, that's really important. But we just want to notice that doesn't necessarily promote growth, right? We have to bring in the challenge, the high touch. And it's really easy for a lot of pastors to fall into this because cozy, everybody likes you. You want to be liked by everybody. And so the sermons, you try to be helpful, but you don't really proclaim the gospel in all its power and all its possibilities. And then, of course, we want to avoid this. This is basically the zone of apathy and slow death. And, if we're honest, a lot of churches are just kind of in this category here. Basically have an unengaged pastor who's incredibly low touch. Maybe he just shows up, goes through the motions doing things, but then there's really no challenge either. So this is really the spiral of death. So notice what the model that we need for ministry is. We need high touch. I would call this high flame ministry, a combination of high touch and high challenge. And so invite you today, if you're a pastor listening to this, how much time are you invested in high touch, high challenge ministry? So look at your calendar. How much have you allocated to that? Are you investing in a small group of people within your church who can then replicate the same model to others? If you're not a pastor and you're a follower of Jesus, are you in a context where you're experiencing high touch and high challenge? Because you need that for your soul. Because what the Jesus comes and calls us to him, he says, well, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up the cross, and follow me. And that following Jesus is moving into the world as an empowered, world-changing disciple of Jesus. The gospel comes to us on its way to someone else, on its way to someplace else. Again, I'm Brian Russell. It'd be a real privilege to have a conversation with you about this. This is just an easy tool to kind of diagram things out. We could do a deep dive on this and look at how this would work in your own ministry, within your own church. If I can serve you in any way, reach out to me today, deepdivespirituality at gmail.com. Please subscribe to the channel if you found this video helpful, and we'll have some additional posts on what high flame ministry, high flame following of Jesus looks like. Live by faith, be known by love, and be voices of hope.